This is Great FM.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Great FM. I'm Ahalya, and today we're continuing the conversations in the world of HR, people, and work with a very special focus on learning and development in today's day and age. Now, I think I bring up COVID-19 and the links to the pandemic many times in this series, but it's just because it's one of those cultural reset events that have a lot to do with our lives today. I'd like to draw your attention to something a bit random. So many of us have probably taken part in this trend of reading a self-help book or two, and whether they really help or not, as someone who likes reading, some of them have genuinely introduced me to some good thoughts, but whether they help or not, according to the NPD group, the US sales of self-help books grew annually by 11% from 2013 to 2019, reaching 18.6 million volumes. And the number of self-help titles in existence nearly tripled during that period, from 30,897 to 85,253. Now, it's not that these titles actually came into existence only during that time, but it indicates a subgenre of reading material gaining extreme popularity and then that genre exploding on the scene. And I kind of always look at cultural trends to inform my opinions of what's important to people, what matters to them in the moment. And I think this particular statistic points to the fact that individuals have become increasingly obsessed with the idea of development, whether it's their personal or professional development. And, during COVID, maybe it's because people needed to feel better. Maybe it's because we found ourselves at a crossroads. The reasons could be many, but L&D, learning and development, have become two un-ignorable and non-negotiable letters of the workplace alphabet. So it's interesting also then to take it a step further and understand how L&D could possibly work in a remote or hybrid work model, right? So let's begin the conversation today with our subject matter expert, Gautam Duggal, Director, Global Talent Management and Learning at Mastercard. Hi, Gautam. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Did you know about that self-help statistic before I brought it up?
I think I would have added a few numbers there because everybody was just trying to cope up with what's happening around them, and we all went into the frenzy of buying so many books. I haven't read everything that I bought, but I think the statistic sounds correct.
Sounds correct. Well, I would hope everyone believes me as well. I promise I've bet my stats. To start off with a very basic question, also at the risk of being a little reductive, has learning and development in your experience always been this much of a priority, or do you think it is actually a post-COVID wave that is here to stay now?
Well, because I come from the L&D fraternity, I would like to believe it was always a priority.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it is now in the spotlight a lot more. And that's because I think people got the time to step back and reflect on, what am I doing every day? Is this the career I always wanted to build? And this is from a personal anecdote. When we were running to the office every day, right, what I do at work was hardly visible to anything at home, right? So when I am in late night meetings and stuff like that, my people at home will assume that I'm doing something very special and out of the box work. But when you're doing that same activity in front of people who are not shy of giving you feedback and asking those tough questions, like your parents, you tend to reflect on it and say, they're right. Is this the most important thing to do at 12 o'clock in the night? Or could this be done on a different day? I think people got that exposure as well. And they realized there is more to their careers that they wanted. Hence, they have started focusing a lot on upskilling, which in turn help HR people. But interestingly, I also have a stat.
Okay.
About 60 to 65% of requests that my team gets today about upskilling is not about going through a learning program, about getting another exposure. They want to do another part of the job or another job in a different part of the business because they want to explore right now, which is nothing to do with a learning program.
That's an interesting statistic, actually. It does shine a light, right, on not just the fact that L&D is becoming more of a priority or is shining brighter under the spotlight, but what facet of L&D is actually shining brighter, right? And it points
That's right.
to priorities today. That's quite interesting. So tell us a little bit about your own experience with learning and development in the work from home days, Gautam, because from someone in L&D, I think that'll be a valuable anecdote.
So let me do a journey back in time.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody who's been working since, I would say, 2011, 2012, um, they would have seen some sort of a, not hybrid, but some sort of a virtual learning already available. Globalization was opening up. We were
Hmm.
still coming out of the 2008 crisis. No longer were you required to go down to London to train people for a week. You could do it via Cisco calls and WebEx calls and all of that. So there was an element getting built up over a period of time where you could actually learn skills or you could interact with people sitting in different time zones, sitting in different countries, performing pretty much the same job.
Mm.
I think what COVID did was it forced everybody across the industries to start doing this now. And for how long, nobody knew at that point in time. So some progressive organizations, the ones that I'd worked before with, they were ready for it. So it was a very easy transit for those folks. For another organization that I'm working with now, it was a tough transition because it was not in the DNA of the organization to do things virtually. They always wanted to do things in person, to have that personalized touch, to ensure that you pass on, the feeling of what it means to be a part of this organization. What came out was a mixed bag of wins and losses. Huge wins in terms of scale. You could
Okay.
do things at a very nominal price, at a huge scale. You could onboard 700 people on the same day. Impossible to do it, in person unless you make everybody travel. What was not possible was that personalized touch. So
Hmm.
I joined a month before COVID had hit the world. I still don't feel that I have, imbibed everything that the organization has to offer. And it's
Okay.
been 4 years because you've not had that interaction.
Right.
Virtually it just doesn't rub off on you. So from an L&D standpoint, that's a big challenge because people rarely don't remember what knowledge they gained. They
Mm.
remember the whole experience of that program. Honestly, if today somebody would ask me to wear a goggle and attend a virtual training, I would probably call in sick. Uh,
Yeah.
Not the best of experiences, right?
Yeah. I think that's very relatable. I think it's also such an applicable experience, even in so many other areas of life, Gautam. So since you've been through it, right, and also
Mhm.
specifically through the lens of someone working within L&D, do you now think that L&D can be as effective online, or is it kind of a
Yeah.
lost battle?
So I think, different strokes for different folks. There are few things that has to be done virtually. They should not be done in person. I'll
Right.
give you an example. We were working on something within the business, and one of these business leaders said, we have a learning program which we've designed internally. People go through about 45 hours of reading material, and then they attend a 3-day workshop, and then they become ready to be deployed on client projects.
Hmm.
I support a consulting function. So time is money for them, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we obviously reimagined it. We applied some basic logic and we said no more 45 hours. You attend a 3-hour virtual training, you're good enough. You
Hmm.
attend a quick assessment at the end, you're good to go, deployed. Money back to the business, that's how you show your wins. Such things should be done virtually. There are some things that you can't do virtually, especially around, I would say, leadership skills. I have personally tried doing leadership workshops virtually.
Mm-hmm.
It is good to complete the content, but today, if you would ask me what was the impact, or do I have a reading on who's going to do what of that group, I have zero knowledge.
Hmm.
Whereas if you meet them in person, you could read their face, realizing this, whatever I'm talking about has happened to this person.
Yeah.
That's a better person to answer this particular question. That has a different impact. So it has to be differentiated based on what you're offering, what is the impact you want to create, what do you want at the end of it. Virtual world is here to stay. It should stay. It's a very good thing to have. But choosing one over the other, I don't think that's the answer.
Okay, okay. So to take that one step further and maybe to remove it a little bit from just, the remote or hybrid work concept, how does this then tie into, so intersectionality is a big thing that we've all been,
Yeah.
witnessing. How does it tie into it being a priority for HR on, individual growth versus supported by company growth?
So from an HR standpoint, it is good to lose talent within the company.
Okay.
We'll be very happy if somebody from HR goes and joins the business team. Somebody from the business teams goes and joins HR,
Hmm.
or somebody from marketing decides to take over internal communications. That's a good thing to have. That is priority for HR today. We don't want to see people sitting in the same role for 3, 4 years now. I think
Yeah.
that time duration has reduced. We also have coined a new term, which is talent to market. We are okay losing this talent to the market now. While this is a great person delivering great numbers, but we don't have a role for this person to be with the company. And this
Hmm.
person might be acting as a talent blocker for others to rise. So it's okay to lose them. So those concepts were not there before. It was
Hmm.
always like just retain, 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 right? And retain within the same role or hierarchy. So for HR, I think one mandate is don't lose talent to the market, lose talent to another team within the business. What that does is it reduces the time of onboarding the person because they already know the business, they know the company, they know how things work. It's just that skill set they need to pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing is, I think HR is becoming a little more open to accepting that they've made a mistake.
Yeah.
I would say this in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
If you've done talent mobility and it hasn't worked out well, I'd seen cases where they would blame it all on the employee and say, oh, this person was not a right fit for the job and it was the
Hmm.
person's fault, right? But now I think they take the onus and they say, okay, if you're not doing it well here, do you want to move back to your previous role and do that because you were doing it well? At least you're not just saying that the blame is with the employee. I think they're sharing that accountability now, which is a good thing to see.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I think HR, along with many other professionals in many different industries, have had to grapple with the fact that, now that things are going to change, we have to also do things a different way. Um,
True.
so we're talking about L&D, Gautam. I'm going to quiz you a little bit. Do you know what
Sure.
Collins Dictionary's word of the year for 2023 is?
Learning. No,
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 that's a bit too
I'm
on the
shooting in the
nose for
dark.
me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
too on the nose for me. But no, it was actually AI. And that also makes a lot of sense, right?
Ah,
When I
okay.
was thinking about learning and development, just in general, the way that we're even working now has changed so much with the emergence of generative AI, our workspace is becoming so accessible, right? And it's only been a couple of months. It's not like it's already been 5 years or something. So do you
Yeah.
want to touch upon the role of AI in learning and development in the context of remote learning and development? Because I think that might be an interesting
Yeah.
trend to keep an eye out for.
Actually, I wanted to say machine learning, but I forgot machine, so I just said learning. But but no, absolutely very important. Without AI, we're not going anywhere. And I keep sharing this with a lot of people is I'm a big user of Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have written any email beyond 300 words in the last 6 months.
Ah, okay.
I use ChatGPT for that. Whenever somebody would ask me for speaker notes for a particular session, it is ChatGPT. So
Mm-hmm.
you could do a lot with AI. Now, I think we still have ways to go before we get to a point where AI becomes smart enough to
Hmm.
support this hybrid setup. Because right now, AI is in very, very initial stage. Even the adoption is very initial stages. Your top line management in the HR or L&D world is not very tech savvy with AI right now. So they don't know the potential of the tools and they don't know the landscape in which they want to operate. So what we are doing is we're following the leader. So Mastercard has deployed this AI enabled talent marketplace.
Hmm.
What it does is it's our internal LinkedIn. Okay. Based on my profile, AI will keep throwing me learning programs. It'll keep throwing me small projects that I could do. It'll keep throwing me open roles, which pretty much fit my profile. That's great. But that's somebody's nudging me for it.
Yeah.
If I interact, I don't interact, it just leads to numbers. It just leads to numbers that Gotham has a 30% interaction rate. He's not liking it. He wants to see more. He wants to see less. We don't have that. So very initial stages.
Yeah, again, a trend that is going to be important to, I think,
Absolutely.
watch out for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You've kind of detailed the things that HR professionals should look out for when they want to make an L&D program effective in the remote context, Gautam. But what are some of the break factors, right? Something that HR professionals absolutely shouldn't do that might actually cause their L&D program to fail?
Oh, I have a long list for it. I think I'll start with the fact that I have met so many HR professionals who are still worried about, the analytics part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
They are still worried about the number of hours spent or the score that I'm getting on feedback, what is my score on whether you like this program and stuff like that. I hear a lot of that rather than hearing We are doing this program because we want to change the behavior that's happening on the job, which will lead to a business impact. I think all the successful L&D leaders that I have worked under, and now I have the privilege of working with, they all have this aspect of forget about the stats, forget about the numbers. Tell me, why are we doing this on a behavioral aspect? Even if you're training somebody on a technological skill, what will change in their day-to-day life? And can you measure that change? Is it going to bring in happiness? Is it going to bring in efficiency? Is it going to bring in retention? What is that change we're looking at? I think we have to change that mindset, is to look at why are we doing this and what's going to change. One other factor has also been when people do programs, we have this trend of just going after the biggest or the trendiest, I would say, acronym of the time. Say everybody should do servant leadership. And I saw like millions of programs coming from leadership programs. Then somebody said, oh, let's do behavioral assessments. Everybody started doing behavioral assessments. Why are you doing it?
Yeah, no, those are, again, very intuitive ways of approaching learning and development. But I think in corporate and business, that intuition sometimes we leave behind, unfortunately. But it's good to know that that's coming back to the forefront. Well, this has been a really great conversation, Gautam. And this applies to every area, of interest in HR outside of L&D as well. Always understand the people you're working with and then decide what you're going to do.
Yeah, I think just spend time with them, because people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And they will end up blurting it out saying, I don't want to do this job because. And then you solve for that because. Right now, we're looking at numbers to solve for a human problem. That is the challenge which I feel we all have.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time, Gautam, and for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, to explore L&D. We've had many conversations actually on Great FM about learning and development, but I think in the remote context, it also gets you to think a little bit more about, the value of it and why it's important, like you said, to answer that why.
Thank you.
And we'll carry on the series as well with many more episodes coming your way, everyone. But in the meantime, soak up this one.
This is Great FM. Great FM.